Welcome back to Adventures of a Black Belt Sommelier, sponsored by Four Paws Restaurant, which is located in that very beautiful building pictured behind me, the iconic fine dining restaurant in St. Paul, Minnesota, with wonderful food, attentive professional service, and an excellent wine program. It's a really, really fantastic restaurant. I'm proud to be part of it. I've told this story here before, but these stories, they disappear after a while, and this one deserves um, not to disappear. So I'm going to tell it again. If you've heard it before, I won't hurt my feelings if you log off. If you have heard it before and you want to hear it again, you'll know that it's true because the details don't change when I tell it. My life went through some pretty dramatic and some somewhat unpleasant changes about 12 years ago. Uber was first launching, it was first becoming a thing, and I thought it would be really cool. Might be really cool to be an Uber driver. Um, it wasn't really cool to be an Uber driver, but I signed on to be an Uber driver. If you can imagine this, I met the manager for Uber Nashville at a Starbucks in Green Hills, and he downloaded the app personally on my phone and explained to me how to make the app work. And I was off and running. It's a little bit more impersonal and technical now than it was back then. But it was good because I had a personal relationship with the manager for Uber Nashville. I actually, in my career, drove 20 over 23,000 Uber trips, which was nice because when Uber went public in 2019, I got a $10,000 bonus as one of the drivers that had driven over 20,000 trips. If you use Uber very much, I would urge you to be polite and generous with your driver because it is a pretty miserable experience. Um, I don't know. At least it was for me. It's one of those things that you have trips that change your life in a positive way. You should have trips where the rider doesn't say a word to you the whole time, and then you have trips where the rider is a nightmare. So it's like life happens in your car, and sometimes really amazing things like this happen. This story I'm getting ready to tell. One night, I picked up a young woman at a apartment building in downtown Nashville. She had so much luggage that I could barely fit it in the back of my Volvo station wagon. She had to sit in the front seat, and she was headed to the airport, which surprised me since she had so much luggage. But anyway, she was. When we got to the airport, pulled up. She was sitting in the front seat of my car. When we pulled up at the airport, she had a meltdown, hysterical meltdown, because she was an hour late for her flight. She'd missed her flight by an hour. And I said, that's not that big a deal. I'll just take you somewhere you can spend the night and they'll honor your ticket tomorrow morning. She said, no, this is a non-refundable ticket. It was only good for that flight. And I've already paid for the excess baggage fee, which you can imagine is a lot of money. And I've only got $35 left. And she didn't mean $35 in her pocket. She meant $35 total. So she was basically homeless. Um, I asked her if she had been an hour late for a flight where she was going. She said she was needed to be at, this was Saturday night. She needed to be in Boston by 9 o'clock Monday morning. And I said, this is an unbelievable coincidence, but I am actually leaving tomorrow morning to drive to New York City. And if you want to come along, you can do some of the driving and pay for some of the gasoline, and I'll deliver you to Grand Central Station, and hopefully you can figure out how to get from Grand Central Station to Boston. Well, you can imagine how ecstatic, relieved she was. So I took her to some friend's house to spend the night. Kept her luggage in my car. Went back and got her the next day. Went and got a U-Haul van that I was using to drive a load of about 50 cases of wine to New York City, to White Plains, New York. And she helped me a little bit load the wine in the car, but not much. She was kind of young, not a small person, and wine was heavy, and it was downstairs and all that. But anyway, we loaded the wine in the back of the U-Haul van and headed east towards Knoxville on our trip to New York City. We were about an hour outside of New York, and I said, we've got 12 hours to kill. why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Her name was Sandra. She said, well, I grew up in Miami, and when I was 12, my parents divorced, and I stayed with my mother. I've never seen my father since. And when I was 14, my mother threw me out of the house, and I've been on my own ever since. I said, well, what are you doing in Boston? She said, I'm a senior at Northeastern University. I said, that's incredible. How did you go from being homeless at 14 in Miami to being a senior at Northeastern University? That's an unbelievable accomplishment. And she said, well, I lived in foster homes. And what I know now, she didn't tell me then, but I know now it was not always very pleasant for her as living in foster homes because she was a very attractive young woman. Um, and some people that she was in their homes, let us say, didn't treat her the way they should have. Um, but I did well in school. So when I graduated from high school, I got some scholarship offers, and the best combination of academics and financial aid was at Northeastern University. So it's taken me 7 years, but I'm going to graduate. If I could get there by Monday morning, I'm going to graduate in May with a degree in economics. She said, the reason I've been in Nashville is because what I do is when I run out of money, I pick a city that I think is interesting, go there, get a job, work, save every penny. And then when I've got enough money to pay the next semester's tuition, I go back to Boston and finish my next semester at Northeastern. It's taken me 7 years, but I hope to graduate in May with a degree in economics. Um, I was just floored by the determination, strength, and everything that this represented. She, she slept most of the way. I hadn't, as is often the case with me in my life, I hadn't really thought through the whole thing. She couldn't really contribute to the gasoline because she only had $35. That wasn't going to amount to a whole beans. And we couldn't stop because she didn't have any money to pay for a hotel room. So I had to drive straight through. I think it was 12 hours. It was about 12 hours. I got to New York. She was asleep. Um, and I started thinking about this young girl with all that luggage again in Central Station and $35. And what in the world was she going to do? So I just kept driving. It was a long drive. There was a terrible accident, traffic jam in Boston that morning. But the last should have been an hour. It took about, I think I remember it as being 6 hours. Um, but it was a long, long drive. We finally got to her dorm building about 8 on Monday morning, which was great because she needed to be in her first class by 9. I helped her carry her luggage up to her room, and she went off to her first class. I took a nap on the unmade bed. Um, I I was been getting paid quite a bit of money to deliver this wine for this customer. So I left $500 on her desk in her dorm and a note with my contact info and said I hope she did well. If she ever needed any help, I would help her if I could. So we stayed in contact for that semester, and she would occasionally text me and ask me for a little money. I mean, it was never much. It's usually, $20 or something she needed to buy some groceries or whatever she needed. And I would send her a little money every now and then. Um, about, well, in May, I was driving in downtown Nashville and I picked up this woman and I asked her, I don't know, somehow what she did for a living came up. And she said she was in human resources at Regent's Bank. And I said, I have this friend who's getting ready to graduate with a degree in economics from Northeastern University. Maybe you'd like to talk to her. Well, guess what? Sandra was hired by this woman from Regent's Bank to work in their, I don't know, I have no idea even what capacity, but they did hire her as straight out of Northeastern to work for Regions Bank in Nashville. Now, I got to tell you, at the time that I picked Sandra up, there were thousands of Uber drivers in Nashville. At the time that I picked up this other woman, there were thousands of Uber drivers in Nashville. Thousands. I know that when I quit driving for Uber, there were 8,000 Uber drivers. I don't know how many there were at this time. But if it's 8,000 times 8,000, that's a whole lot of one in, what is that, 64,000 or 640,000 chances that I picked up both of these people. But then you have to factor in the fact that I was heading to New York City the next morning and Sandra needed to go to Boston. That makes it even more unbelievable coincidence that I picked up her and this woman and was able to help her find her way to Boston that morning. That's my story of the ultimate Uber trip. So as I said, every now and then something really extraordinary happened in my car during those 23,000 trips. That was certainly one of the most special trips I ever drove out of all of those trips. And as I said, I would really encourage you, if you use Uber, be nice and generous with your driver. Thanks so much for tuning in to Adventures of a Black Belt Sommelier. I hope you'll come see me soon for a glass of wine or dinner at Fort Bluff Restaurant.